Hi, this is Dr. Wallace J. Nichols, and welcome to the Live Blue 7 Ages of Water keynote, where I'm going to explain how to put Blue Mind into action throughout your entire life. And I hope you really find this information useful. Let's dive in. So now that we understand Blue Mind, part B of this story is what do we do with it? How do we live blue? How do we put Blue Mind into action throughout our lives? And the way I organize this lecture is through the 7 ages of water. There are 7 stages that we go through, every single one of us throughout our lives. And water plays an evolving role from birth through death. So let's start at the beginning with birth. Every single one of us spent our first 9.21 months underwater in our own private ocean called Mom. And very few of us have any recollection of that, but we all spent that time underwater with our moms. It was dark, it was warm, it was comforting, it was relaxing, it was easy. And then on that fateful day, the day we were born, we came out into the bright lights, the air, the stimulation of the real world. And so we all have this birth story that takes us from the watery womb to dry land. And increasingly, people are beginning to understand that a water-based birth or water-based labor is very helpful. It removes that anxious transition. So water birth is becoming a real modality, and people are bringing water birthing tubs into hospital settings. But once you're born, you have the opportunity, or if you're a parent, you have the opportunity to immediately get a baby re-engaged with water. And that's called water parenting. So in this first age of water we call birth, it's not just the birth, it's not just labor, but it's also the early months of connecting a baby, connecting a child with water at every opportunity possible. So the second age after birth, I call play. And it's incredibly important for young brains as they begin to form to play. Now, play these days is becoming two-dimensional and screen-based, but the kind of play that helps our brains develop most effectively is three-dimensional, outdoor, solving problems in motion, moving your body, not just being sedentary in front of a screen. And so what the science is showing is that play has an enormous range of cognitive, psychological, and even physical benefits to young brains. We're doing a big experiment right now as a society. We're going to see what happens when kids aren't allowed to play outside, because a lot of kids are not going outside. They're not moving their bodies very much, and they're suffering not just physically, but also emotionally, cognitively, and psychologically. So play is incredibly important. Being outside, being with the water. Water is one of the best forms of play. It's infinitely malleable, it's fun, it's unpredictable, it takes on all kinds of shapes and forms, and it just creates a high level of joy and curiosity. We build our hope around water. We can dream around water. It helps us build trust in ourselves and each other as we move through the water and we spend time in water together. We've worked with groups of at-risk youth around the world, and we've seen that when they get in the water, they feel better. There's a group called Northwest Passage that if you go and look at videos about Northwest Passage, you'll hear the kids saying that their first experience of peace of mind in their life was when they got into the rivers in Wisconsin. The first time they felt peace of mind was snorkeling with a camera and a wetsuit and a mask in the rivers of Wisconsin. Groups like Soul River in Portland, Oregon, getting inner city kids out, putting a fly fishing pole in their hands and teaching them what it's like to stand in a river for the first time in their lives. So Chad Brown, veteran, working with youth in Portland to get their Blue Mind on, to put Blue Mind into practice. Even our First Lady, Melania Trump, has repeatedly underlined the health benefits for kids of being in nature. And so this is a nonpartisan or a transpartisan conversation. Nature for kids is a conversation that everyone needs to be engaged with. Through play around water, it helps build confidence. Water is so forgiving. If you fall into the water, you can get right back up again. It allows us to try things, fail, and then try again, which is really what play is all about. Groups like the Wahine Project in the Central Valley in California get kids from agricultural communities to come to the coast, and they become empowered, they build confidence, they get on surfboards, they learn about the ocean, but they're learning about themselves, and they're learning about their blue mind by engaging in a new activity. The sense of freedom that we get through play in the water is extremely important, especially in a world that feels like it's closing in, feels like it's getting tighter and tighter and more restrained. Having moments and that sense of peace and freedom in the water is incredibly important for young, developing minds. This young man, Naoki Higashida, wrote a best-selling book called The Reason I Jump. And in it, he said that in the water, he feels free and happy, among other things. He feels normal when he's in the water. And then as an autistic kid, he doesn't feel normal and good on land. He feels overly distracted and uncomfortable. But in the water, he feels normal, free, and happy. And I think that's true for many people, that the water gives us a release and a relief from the distractions of life on land. Now, play is not just for kids. Play is something we need to do as adults. It boosts our creativity. It connects us to each other. It's one of the ways we figure out new ideas, just by mucking around, by making mistakes. So I always encourage fellow adults to play more, to play in the water. Next time it rains, run out into the rain. Don't run and hide from it. And the harder it rains, the more you should be out in there just enjoying it. And this great old movie called Singing in the Rain was so successful for a reason, because it really is fun and playful to sing in the rain, even though we don't do it very much. The third age I call the lover, and it's the first of the three middle ages of the 7 ages: the lover, the fighter, and the justice. So the lover is when we fall in love with the big ideas, with each other, and with the places that are important to us. And it's the age where we begin to dream about who we are and what we're going to do. We imagine our future. We imagine where we want to spend our time, who we want to spend it with, and the ideas that are important to us. It's so important to let your mind wander, to go out into nature and daydream. There's so many aspects of our lives that are taking away opportunities to let your mind wander into daydream, namely technology. So whenever we're feeling bored these days, we can open up our personal supercomputer and access any song, any film, any piece of artwork ever created in the history of humanity. And that robs us of daydreaming and mind wandering. It fills that time that used to be filled with imagination. It fills it with somebody else's art, with somebody else's imagination, and takes away our own opportunity to do that. So being in water, being in nature is incredibly important for keeping that creative process flowing and figuring out who we are, what we love. It's also a place to access privacy. And the modern world is robbing us also of privacy. Everywhere we go, there are cameras, there are monitoring devices, there's surveillance, and some of it's self-inflicted. And it's really important to break free of that technology and actually experience privacy once in a while, by yourself or with the people you love. We experience a sense of awe when we disconnect and let nature consume us. And the number one source of awe and wonder on our planet is water. We've worked with researchers, have looked at the science of awe, and they've determined that water is the single greatest source of awe for humanity. And what happens, what we learn from the research on awe, is that when we feel that sense of awe and wonder, it switches us into a more empathetic mode. It helps us to care about things besides ourselves, about the bigger world around us, things bigger than ourselves. It switches us from a me into a we perspective. That's what awe does. That's what water does. It gets us outside of our narrow self-interest. It helps us think about the world around us the other people in our lives and more expansive ideas. The Lover is also about romance, about connecting to each other. And so some classic moments in film history, in Titanic, Kate Winslet and the young Leo DiCaprio, they fall in love up on the bow, surrounded by the Northland. There's something about water that creates this romantic setting. In an older film, From Here to Eternity, the protagonists have a romantic moment right there on the edge of the ocean. I like to imagine that same scene without the ocean. It would just be two people rolling around in the dirt in their underwear. It would not be very romantic. But when you add the ocean to it, it was one of the most powerfully romantic and sexy scenes in film history. So something about the water that makes romance enhanced, makes it work. It's almost cliche that you go to the water for your honeymoon, for important ceremonies, that the ocean and the water, the lakes and the rivers are part of that feeling for your romantic moments. And it's certainly true that when we're together in the water, it brings us closer together. Okay, the next age, the fourth age, I call the fighter. That's where we fight for what we love. We fight for the ideas, the people, and the places that we care about. That's the fighter. And everyone knows that you need to have resilience if you're going to be a good warrior, if you're going to fight well. People like the great Sylvia Earle, who has fought for the oceans her entire career, over 80 years old, and she's still going strong. Manu Joe Green fighting for the Hudson River, fighting for the watershed, fighting for the quality of the water in the city, in New York City, but also the entire ecosystem. Young activists like Alice Brown Otter fighting for her water. So important that we have fighters, advocates, and warriors for water. So our athletes are also fighters, and they know that in order to show up on game day and fight and to win, they need to be resilient. And athletes like Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors, he knows that water is his best go-to for resilience. In fact, he, like other elite athletes for the Chicago Cubs and the New England Patriots, they use water and flotation therapy to hit their reset button. Players on the Warriors recently have even jumped in the Pacific Ocean to reset their minds and bodies to come back and win games in the playoffs. Now, this is no joke. Elite athletes are using Blue Mind to enhance their performance. Warriors and fighters also know that humility is important. There's no better source of humility than nature, the great outdoors. That mountains are humbling. Oceans, powerful rivers humble us. This quote from Jane Austen, "What are men to rocks and mountains?" Nature humbles us, and without humility, we will fail. We'll be foolish, we will get hurt, and we will not be effective fighters and warriors. This is my friend Martin Pollock. He fought in Afghanistan. He came home with no legs and one arm. And his plan was to be a blob, in his words, on a stool at the pub with his mates in Cornwall, England, where he's from. But he got hooked up with Operation Surf. It takes veterans with post-traumatic stress out into the ocean, teaches them to surf. And now Martin Pollock is a surf ambassador. He travels the world and inspires people to get beyond their injuries, get beyond their limitations, and challenge themselves. He surfs with pro surfers in Hawaii, in Australia, in Florida, in California, and inspires us to follow his lead, to get out there, and he's a pretty darn good surfer. Groups like Heroes on the Water, who are connecting veterans with kayak fishing. So if you go out on a kayak with a fishing pole, you're going to spend most of your time relaxing, looking at the water. Some of the time paddling, some of the time catching fish, but primarily what you're doing is Blue Mind meditation. So Heroes on the Water knows that. They get people out on the lakes and the rivers with a fishing pole and a kayak, and it's some of the best therapy available. Groups like Force Blue that are connecting Special Forces veterans with post-traumatic stress in the process of healing our planet while they're healing themselves. Incredibly inspiring on every single level. These are the examples of Blue Mind in action. They're warriors and fighters fighting for what they love, keeping their head together, restoring their bodies and minds, and taking care of our little blue planet. You will not succeed without resilience. And each of these examples shows how the water helps us be more resilient, helps us get back on our feet, get back to work, get back into the active service that our planet and our people need. The fifth age I call the justice. And this is the big wide age that we spend most of our lives occupied in. This is the age of problem solving, decision making, creative solutions on demand. As adults, we're expected to do all of those things every day, all day, without fail. That's your job as an adult, whether you're in your household or in your place of work, your place of worship, the teams you play on, the family, the business you manage. You're expected to be creative, problem solving on demand, without fail, all of the time. That's called being a responsible adult. You need to balance your life and figure out how to do that as you carry the weight of the world, as you carry the weight of your family, as you carry the responsibility in your community. You need to balance between the economic activities, the restorative, and the health activities. And so you need to remember that relaxation needs to be part of the equation, or you will burn out. And water is one of the best ways to relax. Whether it's a bath at the end of a long day, or a trip to the coast on a weekend or for vacation, or just a day taking a walk out by the water, or just relaxing with your friends by the water. We took a long sabbatical and walked down the California coast from Oregon to Mexico, and I witnessed the push towards the coast and how that affected real estate values. And this is an example of one small bungalow on the coast of Del Mar, California. When we took the flyer, the real estate flyer, we found that the price of that house was $6.3 million in the summer of 2003. And it reflected a front row premium, a water view premium that carries throughout the country. In Del Mar, California, it's 1,000% a water view premium. But Zillow did a study in 2014 that showed that water view premium is more than double on average throughout the nation. So being near lakes, rivers, and oceans doubles the value of waterfront property. That's a powerful indication that Blue Mind is real, that we make economic decisions that reflect this desire to be by water, this need to be by the water. Cities like Pittsburgh are understanding that waterfront is restorative. The waterfront in downtown Pittsburgh used to be considered a place for dumping, for just getting rid of trash, for dumping chemicals. And now they're bringing back the waterfront, is transforming the way people in Pittsburgh live and the way they appreciate their waters. Is transforming economically, ecologically, and emotionally every aspect of life in the city of Pittsburgh. Cities have water features all over the place. This is an image of the fountain in front of the Wrigley building. And you can see people lined up on the wall. That wall was not designed for people to sit on, but people desire that spot because it's so relaxing during their lunch break. So they climb up and shimmy out on the ledge, and they all face the water. Nobody faces away from the water. Cities like Portland, Oregon are full of urban water, urban Blue Mind, places to go and take a brain break during your busy day. Aquariums around the world are not just for education, but they're also for relaxation. And people go there over and over again just to get their Blue Mind on. So research increasingly is showing that there's a deep psychological benefit by being near, in, on, and underwater, and that we need that throughout our day to hit the reset button, to be responsible adults. Water gives us the sense of solitude. It allows us to be alone with our own thoughts, and that's incredibly important to be a creative problem solver. And what we know is that young people, when given the opportunity to be alone with their own thoughts, find it incredibly uncomfortable. They prefer an electrical shock. Recent study in Science showed that 2/3 of young men would rather feel the pain of an electrical shock than the pain of sitting quietly with their own thoughts for 6 to 15 minutes. So if that sounds familiar to you, then maybe you need some more Blue Mind in your life. Water is also an incredible source of creativity. It boosts our insights. It boosts our broad range of creative faculties necessary for coming up with new ideas. Great thinkers like the neurologist Oliver Sacks said that he got his best ideas in the water, and he had a lot of great ideas. The musician Pharrell Williams said the same thing, that water gave him his creativity. That is the source that he claims is the greatest source of creativity, whether it's the shower or being near the water in the ocean is a source of his creativity. All right, the second to last age we call ebb and flow, and that's when our body begins to age. Inevitably, there are injuries, there are illnesses and diseases that slow us down, and it's a reminder that water is medicine, that water is therapy, that getting our bodies near and in the water can help us heal. In fact, it reduces stress hormones, and those stress hormones that promote inflammation, when they're reduced, increase the healing process. So simply by calming your mind, cooling your body, being near the water, and reducing your stress, the healing process works better by reducing the amount of cortisol that's in our bloodstream. So throughout the healing process, we're understanding that moving to the edge of the water can be an important part of moving that process along. Hospitals around the world are understanding Blue Mind, and here's an example of a hospital in Israel with a swimming pool that this whole range of patients are getting in the water to help their healing process. This will be the norm in the future of healthcare. This is Jarmila. She spent the last 10 years of her life in a nursing home dealing with Alzheimer's. And my friend Greg took her to the pier in Santa Monica because that's where she wanted to go. She wanted to see her ocean one more time. She stood up and shuffled, got out of her wheelchair, and Greg said, "Jarmila, I didn't know that you could stand and walk anymore." And what she said was, "I haven't had anything worth walking to in a long time." So as we're in the later ages of our lives and going through perhaps a healing process, we need to remember that our water, that water that we so connect with, is an important part of that. It's also a source of nostalgia. So later in life, these nostalgic moments, these formative moments, can be incredibly important to think about and to remember and to talk about. And even virtual water can have a healing role. There are studies that are using virtual forms of water in hospital settings, and people are finding that watching whales and dolphins swim helps them to manage their pain. So if virtual water can do this, then think of what real water can do to help us manage pain, anxiety, and the healing process. The well-being benefits of swimming, spending time in water, are extremely well documented. The research continues to flow in, and it's not going away. We need to move forward and apply these Blue Mind therapies throughout all aspects of the healing process. And so the Blue Mind health and wellness benefits are going to continue to be researched. We're understanding that this physical activity along the coast of lakes, rivers, and oceans is important, and it helps deal with stress, anxiety, and depression. So the science of Blue Mind is strong and getting stronger. If you could put it in a pill, somebody would have figured that out, but you can't. You have to go out there and get it and experience it. There's something we call the placebo effect. The more you believe that Blue Mind will work, the more it will work. So keep that in mind as well as you apply Blue Mind health to your life. In sum, water is medicine. Water is medicine for our minds and our bodies. It's medicine for those who need it the most at risk, and it's medicine for everyone else. So that's the core message of this age, the ebb and flow age. And that travel, getting out and going to these watery places, is medicine for those who need it most. The last and least popular age of the 7 ages of water is death, of course, is the end of our lives. And symbolically and historically, water and death have been connected. The river Styx is a famous story involving water and death. But it's also a time when we memorialize and remember lost loved ones. And a lot of times people want to be memorialized by the water. People leave in their will directions to scatter their ashes and remember them by the water. It's a place we can go to grieve and mourn. It's a place we can take our sadness and just let it go into the water. So one of the best places to grieve I know of is in the bath, the shower, and by the water. It's a place we go to reconnect with our loved ones in this time of grief. And it's a place we go to reconcile differences. Being by the water gives us a setting for reconciliation, for connection, and for letting our grief go. There's an ancient passage written by King David 3,000 years ago in the 23rd Psalm. And to paraphrase it, when things are really rough, when red mind is all around you, get down to the water. Sit down by the calm water. Sit by the river and calm your soul, calm your mind. That's what the 23rd Psalm says. So this is an ancient idea that pervades every single spiritual tradition. You find blue mind at the core, that water is healing for your body, your mind, and your soul. You'll find that throughout all spiritual traditions. Lao Tzu said water is the softest thing, yet it can penetrate mountains and earth. This principle of softness overcoming hardness. The Dalai Lama has the word ocean in his name two times. His name translates to ocean master, ocean teacher. And the last bit of this story of Blue Mind is all about access. None of this matters if you do not have access to your blue mind. And we need to fight to keep access open. The things that can reduce and remove access are physical barriers, pollution, and perceptual barriers. So sometimes the signs say, don't come here, stay out, don't go to the water. Sometimes the gates are closed and we're not allowed even to get near the water. Maybe there's somebody that thinks they own the coast or they've just locked those gates. Sometimes the pools are closed, the budgets are restricted, and you just can't go for a swim. And sometimes the water, in fact, is polluted. The water is bad for you. You don't want to touch that water because something bad has happened to it, as in the case of the tap water in Flint, Michigan, or the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, or what we're seeing around the world with plastic pollution in lakes, rivers, oceans, beaches, and coastlines, that when you go to the coast to be happy, to restore your body and your mind, it just makes you sad. And some studies have shown that the psychological benefits of blue mind evaporate when the water is degraded and polluted. So we are literally in a war on plastic and oil in order to clean up our waterways, not just for the ecological and economic benefits, but for the emotional benefits to all people, for the health benefits, for the medical benefits of healthy waters, lakes, rivers, and oceans. And so breaking through these perceptual barriers is important by helping all people access their blue mind, regardless of their economic background, their social background, their race, and their family tradition. We need to break through these barriers. Young people need to overcome their technology addiction, leave the devices at home so that when they go to the beach, they're actually at the beach rather than on Instagram or Snapchat. Maybe we can replace these smartphones with smart turtles and increase the awe, the joy, and the experience that people have while they're out in nature. So in summary, these are the takeaway points of this two-part Blue Mind talk. Water is life, and it also makes our lives worth living. When we undervalue our waters, bad things happen. We lose them. When we undervalue anyone or anything, bad things always happen. So getting that value equation right is so important. Water is our first medicine. This is an ancient idea for emotional and physical health, not just hydration and hygiene, but for our emotional wellness. Always remember the fourth E. The economic, ecological, and educational benefits are very important, but the emotional benefits underlie all sustainability. Water provides a universal tool for mindfulness. It's an on-ramp. You don't even need to want to practice meditation or mindfulness. Water will do the work for you. And access to blue mind, access to water is for all people. We need to work to make access available, to create equity, and to have everyone understand blue mind and have access to it. And finally, please always include the Blue Mind message in your communication, in your teaching, and in your work and the way you live your life. Please share Blue Mind as far and wide as you possibly can, because Blue Mind is so important for all people. So we want you to remember these powerful messages, some of them very simple, backed by rigorous science. And imagine, what if everybody knew what you now know? What if every teacher taught Blue Mind? What if every nurse and doctor prescribed Blue Mind to their patients? Imagine the world that we could create if all of that was true. And remember to take this message, take your Blue Marble message, and pass it on to someone. This is not a message that you should hold inside yourself. This is a message you need to share. So take what you now know, share it as an artist, share it as a scientist, share it as a teacher and a communicator, share it with your friends and family, share it with the people you love. That's what this is all about. So thanks for participating in this 2-part Blue Mind lecture. I hope you got a lot out of it, and send me any questions that come up. I'd love to answer them. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the Live Blue 7 Ages of Water keynote. There's so much information there for all of us to use throughout our lives. So please share it far and wide, because everyone needs to get their Blue Mind on.